Okay, so welcome to part 4 of this tutorial series. Let's just jump right into patching here. So in video 2, we created a Wiimote subpatch, and we did that in max audio effect, right? So go ahead and get that subpatch that we worked on. We'll get the whole patch, the whole thing, right? So click and drag that to audio, open it in Maximus P here. Now, it's in presentation mode here, but here we are in patching mode. So you should have this. If you don't have this, go back to video 2 and create it. Okay, so now I want to do a couple of things to this. I want to have a way to reset the OSC connection, basically. So let's create let's create a button, right, to send out a bang, and then let's put port 9000, and then let's attach that there. Now we want a load message. So load mess 1, and the reason we want this is because we want to hook it up to this toggle object, which you can get by just hitting T on your keyboard. And the reason we want to do that is we basically want the gate that we created here to automatically be open so that we automatically receive OSC data. This way we can make it possible to turn the receiving of OSC data on and off. So if we have a 1, it'll automatically be receiving. Obviously, if you have a 0 or if you turn the toggle switch off, you're no longer receiving it. So the next thing I want to do is I want to create a live.dial object. And this is really important to do correctly, because if you don't, you can get stack overflows and things like that. So this step is really important. So click live.dial, go to your inspector window, and what you want to do here is you want to change the scripting name. Change it to We Excel Pitch. And then go to initial enable, and then change initial to 0.5, or you just type 0.5, enter. Now we're not done. We have more things that we need to do that are pretty important. So we're in the inspector, right? And I clicked on this basic tab, but you actually want to go and click all. And there's a really important reason for this. And the reason is because right now what we're looking at is not, we're not looking at floating point data, right? Because we don't see a decimal here, and we need floating point data. That's going to be really important. So what you need to do, sorry about that, what you need to do is go to the All tab and scroll down and change, don't change that, change this. See, this is integer. It says we're getting integer data. We don't want integer data, we want floating point data. Okay, now there are a couple of other things we need to do also. So let's link to the scripting name. Good, that's what we want to see. And let's change the short name also, so that way it shows up in our UI. Okay, We Excel Pitch, good. Now this is the way that this should be configured. And again, make sure that that's 0.5. And actually, there's one more thing that's really important, and that is we got to change the range/enum. So change that to 0 to 1, and keep it that way. And that's going to be really important. So make sure that you configure that correctly. And now copy it. And we're going to do the same exact thing, but for Wiimote roll data. So basically, in this tutorial, we're going to be working with pitch, roll, and then we're actually just going to use the A button. We're not going to worry about YA or Excel or the other buttons on the Nintendo Wiimote. So then go in here to We Excel, this copy that you made, this We Excel Pitch copy that you made, except change the scripting name to We Excel Roll. We Excel. I guess we're very good at this. I'm not funny. Okay, so change this to we Excel role in here in the short name so that it appears correctly. Good, great, awesome, super, stupendous, and marvelous. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to create a subpatch. So store ID is what we're going to call this subpatch. And basically everything in Ableton has an ID, and we want to take advantage of that basically. That way, like in other words, we have that we're going to be getting this awesome OSC data here. Let me clear this for 1 second. We're going to be getting this OSC data from our Wiimote, but we need to tell Ableton what we want to send the OSC data to, and everything in Ableton Live has an ID, or everything that we can send the data to has an ID. So we need to basically create a module that will tell Ableton Live where we want to send the OSC. So that's basically what we're doing. So make a live.thisDevice object, and this is going to bang when the device is loaded. Now make trigger 1, so T1BB for trigger 1 bang bang. That sounds really funny when you say it out loud. And then create a message and write get ID. So right, pretty straightforward. Get the ID of the thing. All right, now we're actually going to want to hook up the second outlet from this to get ID. Make sure you do that correctly. Okay, now create a gate. And now create an inlet. And send the inlet here to gate, right? Because data that comes in to the gate, you put into the second inlet. And this is how you turn the gate on and off, this inlet. So a 0 is a closed gate, and anything that's not a 0 is an open gate. Okay, so now take your trigger and hook that up to the gate there. And now what we want is live.object. And we're going to hook this up we're going to send this, we're going to send this get ID to the live object. Right, because as you can see, this live.object's left inlet can receive the get ID message. And then here, this is where the ID inlet is. So we want to hook up our gate there. Okay, now an inlet, or excuse me, now an outlet. Okay, and now we never got this last bang, right? We're going to send that here. Okay? And this is basically, this corresponds to restoring the ID. So restore ID. And this inlet kind of corresponds to storing the ID. Okay, so good. Now this is properly done. Save that. Good, so we've created that subpatch. Now here's where the M4L chooser becomes really important. Create a B-patcher. A B-patcher is a subpatch basically with a UI. It's a patch within a patch, just like subpatchers are. All right, create a B-patcher. Now, if you don't have the inspector window of the B-patcher open it. Okay, and scroll down and go to patcher file. Now here's where you need to know where your M4L chooser object is. So mine is, nope, let's go to applications here. M4L.chooser. Okay. And you want the max patch, not the JavaScript. And hit open. Great, and this is what you should see. Now, what you need to do is in the inspector window, go to arguments and write the word track. Now, if you remember the max live, if you remember the live object model, we have track. And then if you were looking at it right now, you'd have track. And then the next thing you'd have is one thing that you could have in the path, the canonical path, would be device. And then in the canonical path, you could have, parameter. So that live object model really comes in handy. So now here we are. We have nicely followed the live object model canonical path. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to connect the store ID here. Good, so things are going good so far. I'm just going to save this. It's always good to save your work. Let's actually create a little more room for ourselves. Don't delete these, by the way. Some tutorials, those get deleted, but don't delete them in this tutorial. Just drag them down. Okay, so now what we want is we want a substitute object. And we want to substitute the word iterate to the word ID. And the reason we want to do that is this. Let's see if I can get this to work. All right, so you see how it says iterate 0? So this 0 is the ID number. We want to keep the ID number, but we don't want that word iterate. We want it to say ID and then the ID number. So we're going to use the substitute object to do that. Let me show you. See, ID 0 is what we want. So that's why we need the substitute object there. Okay, so let's go ahead and delete this. And now this is really important. Make sure you grab from the left inlet of substitute object and put it here into the subpatch that we made that we called store ID. And now I'm going to hit Command-Shift-Y to clean the patch up, make it look, or to clean the patch cable up and make it look pretty. Okay. Now we need to create another subpatch. Let's call this remote tilde. Okay, so this is basically going to, we're going to create something that has two inlets. We want to receive two inlets. We want to receive our dial and we want to receive our parameter ID. So let's make an inlet for both of those. Here's the inlet for the dial that we're going to have, and here's the inlet. I just copied this, pasted it. If you hold the Option key down and click something, you can do that. So this is going to be for our dial, and this is going to be for our parameter ID. Now, what we want to do is we want to get the information going into our dial into the live.remote tilde object. And what we want to do is we want to get the information going into the parameter ID into the live.remote tilde object. But we want to sort of do some things to it first. So create live.thisDevice. And then we want to actually use defer low. And defer low is best explained by the help file. I will just stutter if I try to explain it. So the defer low object places all incoming messages at the tail of the low priority queue. Basically, if I am sending a message out of this object here, and I'm sending messages here, but there's a defer low object in between this and this, that means that everything that comes out of the defer low object arrives after everything that's here, right? So defer low, that's basically what it does. All right, so and that's something we really want. So let's move that to the side. Oh my gosh, look at how messy. Always work neat when you can, but you know, sometimes things get a little crazy messy in Max. All right, so this is just a floating point number. You just hit F on your keyboard for that. Scale, for scaling the incoming data, 0 to 1, 0 to 1. Now you might say, why do that? That'll make sense in a minute. Let's hook that up here, another floating point. And then we actually want a message and $1, meaning a $sign basically indicates that the number going into the message can vary. It can be a variable. Okay, and I believe this is going to be for ramp time, 10 milliseconds. So line object tilde, and then we want to send that into the left inlet of our live.remote, into our value basically. And then we want the ID in. We don't want to just go right into it. We want to, again, do some things first. And so what I'm going to do is highlight these and pull them down. I suggest you do the same because we're going to make some stuff here, basically. Substitute object. And then substitute 0. Now, I know I explained substitute before, but that was with 2 arguments. Just real quick, you know, if I have a 4 going into substitute 0, the way that I've configured this, then I'll still get a 4. But if I have a 0, nothing comes through. So basically anything. I mean, you could write, I don't know, animals are wonderful. And there you go. I mean, anything can come through. So there's our substitute object. And it's good for you to know that function because we're going to be coming out of the right outlet of the substitute object for quite a few things here. So trigger, bang, list, trigger BL. Okay. Now we want to get the minimum. Oh no, not get state, get minimum. We also want to get the maximum. And we want to get the value. So I created a message and I wrote get min, get max, get value. Okay, and we want to connect the first inlet of this object there. Now what we want to make is another live.object. That's a very useful object in Max for Live. Okay, and we're going to hook this up there. All right, now we actually also want to grab the substitute 0. We want to hook that up to the right inlet of live object. Okay, and now let's route the minimum and maximum that's coming in here. And let's send it, let's just put it through these floating points. And then let's go from these floating points here to the low output value and to the high output value. Okay, and now, very important, we go from the substitute object into the ID in inlet, the right inlet of live.remote. And also really important is that you're sending the list here into live.remote. Okay, and let's clean that up. There we go. Command-Shift-Y. It's one of my favorite hotkeys in Max. Okay, so that, I think that'll do it. I think that looks good. Okay, so we're pretty much ready to start using we're pretty much ready to start using our pitch and roll functions with our Wiimote right now. we're pretty much ready to start controlling things in Ableton Live with our pitch and roll from our Wiimote. But you know, we also, let's say we want to use a button, right? What would we do? Well, copy all of this and paste it. By the way, you want to also, I mean, maybe this is, I thought that this was maybe self-evident, but yeah, perhaps it's not. It's probably not. So copy, paste all of that. Copy and paste all of this for your roll data, basically. Because you want to, yeah. Okay. I think you get it looking at it. Moving on. I was talking about what if you want to use a button. All right, well, kind of going to be a special way to do that. Create another live.remote object here. And oops. I didn't copy this. See, it's amazing how if just one thing goes wrong in Max. Oh, you know what? No, I don't know that we need that. I'm going to say we don't need it. Sorry. Live.remote. Oh, man. Max for live. All right, so we want to basically create a select one and a couple of other objects, and here's why. If I hold the A button of a Wiimote down, I'm going to get a 1 as long as I hold the button down, but as soon as I release the button, I'm going to get a 0. So that means I have to hold down the button in order to keep something turned on, and then when I release the button, it turns off automatically. Now that's not necessarily bad, but maybe that's not what you want. Maybe you want it so that when you push the button, it turns it on, and then when you push the button again, it turns it off. So that's basically what we're going to create here, like a little hack for doing that. A little hack? I don't know that it's a hack. Well, we're creating a series of objects that's going to do that. Okay. So there's our cycle. There's a message 1. Here's a message with 0. So 1 is on, 0 is off. We're going to send both of those into the live.remote object. And now we're going to go here to our subpatch for the Wiimote. We're going to go button A. And there we are. There we have it. Things should be working now. Oh, we didn't do one thing. We want to add things to presentation mode. And actually, let's add live.button. This way we can tell if the Wiimote button is being pressed. Let's add that. Our 2 dials. Let's add our B patchers. Let's add all of those to presentation mode. So you can do that. The hotkey for doing that is Command-Shift-P, or you could just right-click and then there should be Add to Presentation. You could click that. Since I already hit the hotkey, everything's in presentation mode. Now go over here, click this little board with or in this icon here. Now everything that is below this line won't show up in your audio Max audio effect. So you've got to drag everything over there. I don't know why I just dragged one B patcher instead of being, I don't know why I'm making this way harder than it needs to be, but sometimes that happens. All right. Just make sure everything is above that line so you can see it, basically, is what I needed to tell you. That's basically what was important, okay? So we're doing that. That's what we're doing now. Hooray for us. And then this is all going to show up, and we're going to use it in Ableton, and it's going to be great. So now I'm going to save this, and I'm actually going to quit Max, right? Because I have Max open. I'm going to quit it. And what you should make sure you do is that you have Osculator open. And I do have Osculator open. Remember, that was in tutorial video 1. So you should have Osculator open. And now, awesome, look at this. We can see the data coming from here, and we can see it inside of our object. Now, let's say I want to control the panner for Audio 3. Well, that's why our M4L chooser is so useful. Go to Audio. Go to Mixer, and now click Panning. Magic! It's Magic. Okay. I'm getting a little too excited about this. All right. So this brings an end to tutorial video 4, right? So now we're going to stop this video and we're going to just do one more, the finale of the series. Huzzah. Thank you for watching.